Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to turn your Joule into more of a golden fade. But before we do anything, we need to take out the battery that's on the inside of the Joule so it doesn't blow up. Now, what I have here is just some tweezers. What I'm going to do is take the point of the tweezers and push the little LED button in, which would lock it, which would unlock the battery so I can easily slide it out. I don't know if you can hear it, but I made a little click noise. And then I'm going to take my tweezers and open them up and gently push out the battery that's on the inside of my Joule. You can see it kind of coming out the bottom there. Then when it's about this much of the way out, so you can see the little yellow thing, I'm going to gently pull it out the rest of the way, making sure not to damage anything on the inside of the Joule. And if you look, you can kind of see maybe you can see right here, you can see the airflow, little oxygen sensor right there, and you can see the little LED right there. So first I'm going to look at my contacts. I have some juice on the little rubber boot part that goes on the outside of the contacts, so I'm going to clean that off. And then we can move on to the next step. If I have my little battery right here, it should be fully working and still intact. If I were to plug it in, it would still, the light would still turn on, which means it's working. So now we have just the shell of our Joule. There's nothing in the inside. You can see right through it. And then we move on to the next step. So the next step of turning our Joule into a golden fade towards the bottom, we just need to clean out our Joule to make sure there's no spotting when we do clean it. So I'm just taking a paper towel and kind of rubbing down the outside of the Joule to make sure there's no residue from anything on there. And I'm gonna slide my paper towel on the inside of the bottom of the Joule to clean out any dirt residue that might have gotten in there, as well as the top, because there might be some juice remnants in there from a leaky pot or whatnot. So I'm just going to clean that out really quick. So now I have more of a clean Joule. Sorry, my dog's right there. More of a clean Joule. So it should be ready. I'm going to blow it off just to get any paper towel remnants on there. Now we have a clean shell of our Joule, and we're going to move to the next step. So in the next step, we're going to need a spatula and a Joule and our gas burning stove that will produce a flame. So I'm going to turn it really low, kind of like to that, and I'm going to place my Joule on this little spatula right here, about halfway down the shell, and I'm just going to gently put it over the flame towards the end of the flame and just let it sit there. I'm not going to touch the Joule in this process because it's going to get pretty hot. And it's going to take a little bit to cook the Joule. You're going to have to be patient with the process. You're not going to want to flip it at all. You're just going to let it sit on that heat for a little bit. And since it's clean, the golden fade should be very even on the Joule. Mine is just a black basic Joule. I don't know which version it is, but I wanted to customize it, so here we are burning the hell out of my Joule. So, excuse my dirty oven, but I wanted to show you what is happening right now. As you can see, my Joule is just a little bit over the flame of the stove, and it's on a low setting. So I'm just cooking it until I start to see that golden fade, which should be about 2 minutes in length. I don't know if you can see it that well, but it's starting to turn golden on the ends of it. And it's a very slow process, but I'm gonna wait until it reaches about that part on the spatula. But it's happening. So now that I've finished cooking my Joule, I'm going to just let it cool down. I'm not going to stick it in water or anything. I'm going to let it sit on the spatula for about 5 minutes so I don't damage this little battery cart right there by putting it in water, because it will make it shrink. So now I'm just letting my hot Joule just kind of sit down for a little bit. any surface. Just prop it up and let it sit for a little bit. Don't touch it or anything like that. So I just looked at the temperature. So now that I took it off the stove, you can see it has that fade. It looks way better in real life, trust me. Now what I'm going to do is just wipe it off, make sure there's no residue from the stove on there, and then we can move to the next step, which is putting the battery back in and securing the pod and everything. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put my pod back in. I'm going to make sure that everything is in its right place, make sure the boot is clean, make sure my LED is right, look at the air oxygen filter. And the most important part of this is to make sure that you put the LED in the right way. You can see it right here on the battery. Sorry, I ran up the stairs. You can see right here the little spot. So I'm going to carefully slide the battery in the bottom of my Joule just a little bit. It'll take kind of a little bit to try and like secure it back in there, because it's not meant to like really come out very much. So I got the boot in there. Oh, you're gonna want to push the LED back in. Bruh, fuck. Push the LED back in. It might pop out when you're trying to do something. So just push it back in. And then you're gonna shove the little casing in there just a little bit at a time, making sure not to force it too much. It will take a little bit and a little bit of patience to try and slide it back in, but then when you get it in a little bit, you should be able to just push it back in. Make sure to support it as you slide it back in, because it is a very like more delicate process to slide one of these back in. You're going to support it right here as you push it in, because you don't want to bend your battery. You're going to have to use a little bit of force to get it back in, since it's not used to being taken out and put back in. So it'll take just a second to get it back in. Make sure to support the battery all the way through until you get to the bottom. Sorry, I'm trying to slide it back in. Then when you have this little bit of space left, push it. You don't need to really support it that much anymore. Just push it right back in there. All the way in. And it should just snap into place like that. And then, once we get it all back in there, I'm going to connect my pod